What's up, y'all? My name is Stevie Matt, and welcome to It's Not That Deep. So since this is the first video, I just wanted to do a really quick introduction so to give you an idea of what to expect from the channel. Once a week I'll post videos talking about recent things that I've watched, movies, TV shows, video games that I've played, maybe even books and graphic novels. Basically, if it tells a story in any way, shape, or form, it's viable to catch my attention. From time to time, I may veer off and talk about developments in the entertainment industry, Hollywood, Bollywood, Nollywood, international cinema. I'm trying to put my ear closer to the ground in that regard, so we'll see. Once a month, I'd also like to post video essays, which will be more like formal and structured, sort of an in-depth analysis on a body of work. For example, recurring themes in a director's filmography or putting two movies in conversation with each other. Those take a bit more time, so it may be a little while longer before I get my first one out on those. Watching those, you'll definitely get a good idea of where the name of this channel comes from, because you'll be watching it and hopefully you'll be like, I never thought of it that way. That's pretty interesting. And or it's just a movie. It's really not that deep. You see it? Either way, don't trip, because I probably agree with you. And yeah, we'll see where the channel grows from there. You never really know. Possibilities are endless. So lastly, and probably the most important question is, who the hell am I, right? My name is Stevie, like I said. I'm just a writer. I have pretty much been a writer all of my life. Studied it in school. Spent a lot of time and energy and money, studying the craft, studying the technique, learning how to pull stories apart, figure out what makes them work. I took a whole class on The Sentence. That was the name of the course. We spent an entire academic quarter studying The Sentence on a college level. And you probably think you know what? But yeah, I did eventually get my degree in writing, which, yes, that does mean that I'm better than you. Actually, what it means is that I make poor financial decisions, and I could talk about this stuff all day. So that's what I'm gonna do. So 2020 has been a dumpster fire of a year, right? Yeah, pretty much goes without saying. But being stuck in the house since like March has given me a lot of time to get caught up on a lot of stuff that I had been falling behind on, been meaning to get to. And so I kind of just wanted to use this video to go back and revisit the things that I'd seen this year and things that had, caught my attention for one reason or another. As you know, not much came out this year, especially in regards to movies. We got a lot of TV shows, but not so much new movies. So these won't be things that were so much new to this year, but new to me. And hopefully this will give you a good idea of my tastes and my preferences and what you can expect me to be just talking about on this channel. One of the few movies I did get a chance to see this year was also one of the best movies to come out this year, Sonic the Hedgehog. I love this movie so damn much. I went to go see it with coworkers, and they said they enjoyed watching me enjoy the movie as much as they themselves enjoyed the movie. I was a hootin' and a hollerin' the entire time. I'm obviously a big fan of Sonic, and they did him so good. When the trailer first dropped, of course, everybody was talking about his design, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I was ready to look past it because all I was really paying attention to was his voice and his energy. Did he feel like Sonic? And he did. Like, I grew up playing his games. My favorite Sonic games are probably on the Dreamcast, which I recently got a new one. I say recently, but like in the last couple of years, for several reasons, because there are several games that I love on this system, but namely Sonic Adventure 2. So yeah, I go in as a fan of the movie, and it was just, the Easter egg references were really cute. They threw them in very nice, subtle ways. Green Hill Zone makes its reference at the very start. They give the shoes their moment. When Little Baby Tails made his cameo at the end. He was adorable. He was written to be like a little, a kid, and I think canonically he's like 12 or something like that. I forget. They're really young. They're babies. But what I think of as its spiritual predecessor, Detective Pikachu, also just such a fun movie. If you saw it, You already know what I'm gonna say. That plot twist at the end had us all like, this is a movie targeted at kids. We're not gonna go too hard on this. We're gonna let this slide because it is what it is. The movie is fun, whatever. Sonic did not have that. You know, it was a really solid story. It was consistent to the world that it developed, so there was never a moment of like, okay, sis. The one thing I will say is that they put so many humans in the story, and it's kind of like, you know, I feel like you could probably not revolve a story around humans and still make it appeal to audiences, especially since this is targeted at kids anyway. It's just one of my things is I would like to see more movies not about humans. That's just my like sci-fi fantasy thing. I do think we can empathize with stories whether or not they have a human in them. But yeah, I love Sonic. If Dump Him Sis was a horror movie, it would be Midsommar or Midsummer. I'm sure it's Midsummer, just spelled weird, but because of the weird spelling, and I'm a troll, I constantly am like, oh, Midsommar, and now it's like I actually can't say Midsummer. I have to remind myself to say it. You can totally blame me. It's my fault. That's what you get for trolling too much. What I appreciated about the movie is that right from the start, it establishes this guy's an asshole. And then it could have easily delved into, again, both sides fallacy thing going on, where it could have been like, yeah, but she is also very needy, so maybe don't go so hard on him. It was like, no, she's worried, like maybe I'm too needy, maybe I'm asking for too much. And her friend in that conversation on the phone is like, no, you need what you need. You have your needs, and if he's not able to meet them, then he's not the right one for you, and that's just that on that. I was like, okay, I like that friend. That's me as a friend, basically. But I appreciated that they, gave her that agency right from the start. That was like, no, you're fine. It's a matter of compatibility. You have your needs, and that's okay. And then, of course, you have the death cult. So, like, yeah, she's being empowered through induction into a death cult. So it's like, nothing's perfect. But yeah, I like that she set his ass on fire at the end. He had been, he just was not a good person. Yeah, he was stringing her along. He tried to steal old boy's research thesis out of nowhere, and it was like, really, dude? And so he was just doing this, that, and the other. And so when they lit his ass up, I was like, hey. But then what I really appreciated again was following that thread of empowering her is that final shot of her face. She smiled, and it kept there. It cut at the smile. I smiled. It was sort of a manic smile, so you're kind of like, oh, she done gone off the deep end, which is part of the like eerie, unsettling nature of the movie. But it was also like, oh, she doesn't feel remorse for what she just did, and I was like, I can rock with it. Sometimes films like to punish women for retaliating against men, for harming them in whatever way. He never hurt her physically, but there was a lot of emotional stuff that he was doing to her, and so you can wrestle with, was going that far necessary? And that's really the question. But what I appreciate is for her character, they didn't punish her for retaliating. Of all the movies that I watched this year, of all the stuff that I watched, there were a good chunk of them that just deserve far more energy, far more time than I can give them in this little video. I'll make a brief mention of them now, and you can definitely expect me to go into more detail on them in later videos, so keep an eye out. So this one I got to see in theaters. I saw this movie 3 times when it was in theaters. I think it's one of the best movies that came out this year, and easily one of the best comic book movies of all time. Birds of Prey, directed by Cathy Yan, who did that. It was stylistic, it was fun, it was funny, and that fight choreo. Anyone who knows me knows that I am a stickler for fight choreo, and this movie, unlike many comic book movies that preceded it, really delivered on fight choreo. There was so much more that I loved about that movie that, again, I will talk about in later videos. I'm probably going to dedicate a video to her in general, because her character is being taken in some really interesting directions that I'm really into. Sorry to bother you. I saw this year finally, and I have never watched a movie that illustrated what it feels like to be a cog in the corporate machine as effectively as this movie did. There are lots of movies about, being a working slog or whatever, and those are also really good. But I think what set this movie apart was that it had the class analysis to back it up and to really make a point, as opposed to just oh, it's all about, you know, getting out of that shitty work environment. It's like, no, let's destroy this whole shitty system. Of course, it's highly stylized, extreme, you know, surrealistic, and sort of plays around in absurdity even. And yeah, lots of stuff going on in that movie that I would really like to talk about again in another video, but just wanted to mention it here. So, you know, the big movie that brought this year in that I finally got to see this year was Parasite. It won the Academy Award at the beginning of the year. Yes, that was, I believe it was this year. Or did it come out last year? It came out in, yes, it would have had to. I wanted to be like, yeah, it was this year. But actually, you know, I'm not quite sure. I think it was, yes, it was January. This year has been something else, child. I finally got to see it. It was part of an Oscar screening at my job, and I walked out of that theater just speechless. And yeah, so that put me on to Bong Joon-ho's as a director. And we go into lockdown in March. I have lots of time, so I just watch his whole filmography. I watch, you know, one after one, night after night. I find a way and get all of his movies, and yeah, he's definitely getting a deep dive later on. And then the next movie, Jojo Rabbit, I see that this year, part of the Oscar screenings. One, I went into it excited and enthused because it was Taika Waititi, who I fell in love with as a director with Thor Ragnarok, which is also one of what I consider one of the best comic book movies of all time. I've written on that movie. I am practically evangelical about that movie. So my feet are firmly planted on that one, whatever it may do for my nerd cred. He had gained my respect with Thor Ragnarok, and then he himself is a Jewish man, so I was like, maybe he's coming from with a perspective that will be valuable, but you know, the story itself is like, we'll see. And he delivered. He executed it that so well. That movie was so good. It really blew me away. Tore me apart too. So I was like, all right, then I gotta do what I did too. And I watched, again, after the Bong Marathon, I found all of Taika's movies and watched those one by one, night after night. And yeah, he's definitely getting a video. I actually think my first video essay will be on his film, so keep an eye out for that. That should be coming soon. I said at the beginning of the video that I'm, you know, working towards familiarizing myself more with international cinema. And my roommates actually showed me a couple movies recently, two Bollywood films, and they really solidified that decision for me. Om Shanti Om was the first one, and it's a really interesting plot structure. It's about a guy, he's like this up-and-coming actor who's in love with this very famous starlet, and she's in love, or she's engaged to a producer. He's a ruthless producer, and when she threatens his coin, he basically kills her, and our main character dies trying to save her. But there's a baby being born that same day nearby, and he ends up reincarnating. Jump forward 30 years, and now he has grown up to be the famous actor he always aspired to be in his previous life, and he's working in the same industry. Circumstances bring him back to that production set where he died in his previous life, and the memories come flooding back, and he decides he's going to avenge her. You know, avenge his death and the death of that starlet that he was in love with. And that was something that also caught my attention, was that instead of developing the relationship between him and the actress at the beginning of the movie, what they do instead is give them this very lengthy song and dance number. And so at the beginning, they're getting to know each other on a date, and at the end of the song, now the relationship has been established. And I just found that a very, very interesting alternative to, like, you know, oh, their relationship wasn't earned. You know, instead it's like, okay, this section is dedicated to earning that relationship, and then we move on to the rest of the plot. So the other movie they showed me was a film called Three Idiots. And if you are involved in academia or in an academic institution or anything like that, you definitely need to check this movie out. So it's about these three guys. They get into a top engineering school in the country. It's like the top school in the country, and they come from very different backgrounds. So like one of them is, he wants to be a nature photographer, but his parents push him into engineering because it's a much more reliable career. And then you have the other guy. The second guy he's naturally gifted at engineering. He's passionate about it. It is something that he actually cares about, but he's also extremely poor, and so his pressure is that he has to succeed so that he can raise his family out of, you know, severe poverty. And regardless of how much he loves it, that's a lot of pressure on his head, and it gets to him in some very intense ways. And then you have the third guy, who is mostly pretty much the crux of the movie's themes. He is there simply because he likes to learn. He's naturally gifted. He's passionate about it. He's an engineer because he's curious about how things work. And when he gets there, he clashes with the leadership of the school because he's there to learn, and he's excited and curious, and the school is all about memorizing, regurgitation, and getting a well-paying job. Learning is like last on the list of things that they prioritize. And what's interesting about it is that it's a college coming-of-age film, so it has some some dick and fart jokes, but it's not nearly as crass, and it is really funny. The songs are a lot of fun, and again, it's also 3 hours long. It's far longer than I would expect a movie in that genre to be. But that's, again, going by American standards, so they obviously are much cooler with longer movies than we are, and I'm kind of here for it, because, again, I watch Lord of the Rings Extended Edition for fun, so, I'm here for it. Alright, so, a little confession time. I'm very, very, very recent to watching TV shows. I did not grow up watching TV series. I mostly stuck to movies. Movies were my background noise if I kept something on. The whole, keeping up and coming back once a week to keep up with it just really was not my bag. If you have a favorite, I probably haven't seen it. I've seen clips of this and that and the other, but I've rarely seen a series from beginning to end or kept up with it, watched it on air, none of that. So I watched a couple this year. I'm going to start off with one that my roommate showed me. It is called Harper's Island. It's essentially a 6-hour long slasher film. It's 13 episodes that are 30 minutes long, but what I found interesting about it was that because it has 6 hours as opposed to an hour and a half, it has a lot more time to develop its characters, really take you on a ride with the twists and turns, and so the plot's going here and there. It's really interesting to see how much more involved it can be given how much time it has, and so that was just interesting to me. And then there are 2 shows that I watched where that have really solidified that unless I'm really not feeling a show, I'm going to start giving them 2 seasons. First off, The Boys. Mind-blowing. Probably my favorite series I watched this year. This year. That season 1 I was into. It was I was not expecting it to be such a good illustration of what superheroes would look like under a capitalist society. I feel like The Boys TV show is what the Watchmen graphic novel wanted to be, but it lacked the class analysis and the race analysis to really deliver its criticism and commentary that it wanted to, and so The Boys has a much more sort of in-depth illustration of superheroes under capitalism, what that would look like. There were just some things in the characters' choices they made that were kind of irritating, but it wasn't like ruining the show for me. It was just like, okay, Butcher, I love you, but sometimes you do things that really, really annoy me. Huey drives me insane. He is so fucking useless. And so in season 2, it addresses all of those things. So again, we stick to that illustration of capitalism, but now in this season, we're again we're expanding that into fascism and imperialism, which are natural extensions of capitalism. And so you're seeing that with Vought's program creating these super villains elsewhere to boost their capital here in the States. And then of course you have little Miss Nazi Barbie, Stormfront, who, if you watch the show, you already know. But then you also have the emotional core of the show is the whole show revolves around telling the boys about themselves and giving them the chance to step up to the plate. So I really appreciated how the boys improved from season 1 for season 2. And then Umbrella Academy is the real improvement for season 2, because season 1 was so annoying. I don't like apocalypse storylines in general. I think they're become very generic, a generic plot device for superhero stories. And with this one, it was so intimate and personal that I don't think they needed it. It really could have just been about this family of supers and their dysfunction, and the whole apocalypse thing was just sort of annoying to me. And then, of course, the ending, they take Vanya and turn her into Jean Grey, and it was just like, okay, I'm completely over it. This is all formulas. But I watched season 2 anyway because I I was kind of interested to see where they would take it. The ending of season 1 left me curious, so I watched season 2 and oh wow, what a turnaround. Like, it started off again, they were bringing back the apocalypse storyline, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Again? And it wasn't until like episode 4 or 5, I forget which specific number, that it was like, oh, now I see what they're doing. And it was basically, yeah, the apocalypse had become a metaphor for the dysfunction in their family. And it was basically, in the first season, they ran away from it. Nobody in the show grew in season 1 because the whole season was about them trying to run away from this thing. And in season 2, number 5 tries to do that again. But this time, it falls through. He's not able to run away, and now he, and in turn, the entire family, now has to they have no choice but to confront their demons head on, and they stop the apocalypse. So it was just like, just thematically, what this season did was like, thank you. Yes. So after that, I was kind of like, you know what? I'm going to start giving shows a season 2, up to season 2, unless it's completely unbearable. I do not support hate watching, but sometimes I personally will choose to push through simply because there is something that I'm seeing, or there's enough there that I want to keep going, but I will draw the line if season 2 doesn't do it. And that's kind of where I am with Lovecraft Country. I was really excited when it first aired, and the first episode, because it was all these things that I love. It was, black people inserted into sci-fi in ways that I hadn't seen before, and all these different elements being thrown together, and I was like, this is really promising. And then it wasn't. It was obviously aimed at black audiences, but I think that it did not have clear enough intentions on how it intended to serve us, and so it ended up being reduced to spectacle and being like, yeah, this is how things were, and it's kind of like, we know. So it just never felt like it was serving us as much as it was education for white viewers to learn about the evils of racism. And it's kind of like, these are things we know racism exists. We live it every day. White people know racism exists because they practice it every day. They perpetuate it in their own ways. So what are we gaining from this except like, look at this traumatizing image. Look at this traumatizing image. Look at this traumatizing image. The plot was messy and inconsistent. The characterizations were basically like, these characters are going to do what we need them to do in this episode for the sake of the plot and whatever the theme of this episode is, even if it's inconsistent with what they did in previous episodes, because they're trying to make a point about da-da-da-da-da. And so it was just like, okay. Misha Green, the creator, the showrunner of the show, is open to criticism. She seems to be receptive, so hopefully she listens to the vocal critics who have talked about the many issues with the show's writing, how it treats its queer characters, how it treats its fat, dark-skinned characters, and hopefully season 2 is better. So despite all of my rantings, I do intend to stick around for season 2, so we'll see how that goes. So you probably figured out from my reaction to the Sonic movie that I am indeed a gamer as well. I'll be honest, I have a huge backlog of games. Games have gotten so damn expensive, and my income just has not grown to match the cost, so I fall behind on games very easily, so I don't get to play nearly as many as I'd like to. But I was very fortunate to be able to play Animal Crossing when when lockdown started. I was able to jump on that wave, and I'm one of the OGs when it comes to Animal Crossing. I played the original on GameCube. The crazy thing was, I played the original on Animal Crossing, and I haven't played one since, and it was like, God, this game has changed a lot. And we've added so many things. It's gotten so much bigger. We have a little bit of a story, but we have a little bit of a main quest and everything, and I was like, I'm here for this, child. But it was, I spent months with that fucking landscaping thing. The terraforming was the worst thing they could have did. I went online, got ideas for things to do. And moving that museum, man, that museum is so pretty. So I love that game. It was so much fun. I've of course fallen off like we all knew that we all would. Haven't played it in a while. I won't say how long. It's been months. But I'll get back into it. It's a game that never goes anywhere. My neighbors are going to be pissed. I might start over. But anyway, and then later in the year, I finally got around to beating Breath of the Wild. I had played it, I've had it for a couple years. I never got around to playing it, but now I had no distractions, so I played the hell out of it, and baby, that is what I have been wanting from Legend of Zelda for so long. Like, since I played Skyrim, I was playing that, and I was like, this whole open world format would go so well with Zelda. It's perfectly made for this. It's even the right era. It's that, that sort of medieval era. So they finally did it, and they did it so well. And so they completely rehauled the Zelda formula. It was gorgeous. It was fun. We all have a little bit of problem with that wear and tear on the weapons. That got super frustrating after a while, because it seemed like every weapon broke so quickly, and it was like, even the super special weapons, I feel like some of them should have been unbreakable, but it was like, all right, whatever, child. I may do. But yeah, it was super fun. It did all the things that I wanted from the franchise in terms of, expanding into this new generation of gaming. And I was just so impressed. And I'm so happy that it exists. And I can't wait for Breath of the Wild 2. And then the next big game that came out this year that I was really excited about was Ghost of Tsushima. Quickly made its way to top 5 games of all time for me, and because of the storytelling. It's inspired by Akira Kurosawa, who is a huge Japanese filmmaker, and it was placed in the samurai genre. And so, of course, the story has to deal with the honor code and samurai honor, and it approaches violence from numerous ways. So each character approaches the story in a gives a new angle to this story of protecting your home from invaders, and what they have to do, and how it weighs on their spirit, what they have to do in order to protect their home, and the choices that they make. And the game just has this really interesting ongoing conversation about violence and retaliation and honor, and it was just like mind-blowing how good that game was. That is what I want from gaming. If we're going into cinematic storytelling, then tell a damn story. All right, so that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned. I'll have another video up next week, and I will have that video essay up as soon as I figure out how to get that together. So that's going to take a little bit more work. Stay up to date. Follow me on Twitter. I have a Ko-fi account, and I will put those links down below. And I finally get to do the thing. I have made jokes about this for so long, and now I get to say it in earnest. But like, comment, and subscribe, and share with all your friends. Tell them to watch me because I'm cute and kind of funny and even a little bit smart. But yeah, wash your face. I'll see you next week.